Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I thought this was a very nihilistic and cynical post, but I think it encapsulates American rot pretty well and how Western values is actually making a lot of men disenfranchised and resentful. So, when people talk about assimilate into this Western culture, I think it's important to analyze what are Western men saying about Western women or vice versa, right? I've dug into a lot of Radfem's complaints about men in general, but I haven't really picked apart the ideas that men present. So let us do that now, inshallah. Wi-Fi Money Plant says here, bro, just marry a God-fearing woman and have 3 kids, it will fix all your problems. I swear to God, these people are so effing annoying. First, good luck finding such a woman. Even in the most conservative places, women still use phones and the internet and have been brainwashed to some degree. So let's analyze this real deep. Okay, so, God-fearing woman. I don't think a lot of Christian women are that way. Christian women in America are quite liberal, not very different from feminists. Just look at Turning Point USA had this women's leadership summit, and they had an ex-OF girl there who has no knowledge in theology. It's fascinating how many Christians, they don't promote actual nuns, actual female scholars. It's all e-girl celebrities who, if you had to make them take a test on the Bible, they probably wouldn't even get a D+. So, further, if you look at the TradCon TikTok sphere, these women are showing their cleavage, they're in summer dresses, they're being sexual, like spilling cake batter on their chest, giggling, there's lust involved, they wear extensive amounts of makeup. They're not any different than the liberal women, really, who just are open about embracing hedonism, right? See, when you come across a goth or a rocker, she's cool with who she is. She knows what she's about, and she doesn't give a damn what you think. Whereas a Christian woman, if you tell her to cover up and that she's not obeying her values, she's like, oh, don't judge me. He who without sin cast the first stone. And then they leave out, oh, but Jesus said, rise and sin no more. So what you're doing is a sin and you need to stop it. So someone can judge you, but you have to stop it. And if someone isn't doing that sin, it's okay if they tell you to stop. For example, if someone smokes meth, but then they tell you to stop smoking meth, yeah, they're bad for smoking meth, but they're still right because they're telling you to stop smoking meth, right? It doesn't, just because they may be doing that sin doesn't mean that you should still keep doing that sin, right? And so, American women are not very conservative, alright? And I understand this young man's plight. He's feeling nervous. He wants a woman who actually fears God. Now, for us Muslims, as an American revert in particular, you really become God-fearing when you start to do your best to obey the dress codes. So, step 1, cover your hair. Step 2, wear loose clothes. Retire the yoga pants. No more bikinis. No more booty shorts. At least you can wear that at home for your husband on a special night, but out in public, you don't do that, okay? And so there's levels to it, but level 1 is covering your hair. Not like the way where you just have a loose towel over your head, it looks like. Not to be rude, but I'm mocking it because these women think that they're, like, being Islamic by just having literally half their head out, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, you think you're a Vogue model? What is this? Wear a proper hijab. Your neck's exposed. You basically might just have a dinner napkin on. That's not Islamic at all. Okay, you gotta, cover the ears. Like, what's happening here? You look like you have just like a literal bandana on your head. So, you have to think about that as well. Now, the thing is, I've come to really recognize that women in the Middle East, yeah, they're changing to become more American, westernized in some degree, but they're more conservative there. You're not going to find very conservative women in America. You can tell a conservative woman by how she dresses, most of all. If she's advertising her body for every guy, her baiting strategy is different. She presents the body first, the mind second. But again, she's not all at fault here, because a lot of men, they don't care about your intelligence or your brain or your personality. So they look at the body, and if they can't see your body, they're not going to approach, right? Men, oftentimes, in America, they see you got your boobs out, your ass out, they're going to go over to you and sugar you up. That's the way it is. A lot of men will deny this, but it is what it is. Now, this is why, and also that's why so many MAGA Christians say ban the niqab, ban the hijab, ban the burqa, because they want women to show their bodies and to show their beauty. They don't want you to conserve your beauty for your husband. They want to be able to gawk at other men's wives and to gawk at other women, essentially, while they're married. You know, they just don't want to admit that sin in their heart. They think it's just about fighting Islam, but in reality, it's about fighting modesty. He mentioned women still using phones, so this hints at globalization. How no matter where your woman is, she still has a device in her hands that can give her access to better men in terms of the economic sense, and that she can get FOMO, fear of missing out, and want to leave you. And she might be delusional by bots as well. Like, so someone can just be doing a phishing scam, create fake profiles of men using AI chatbot, AI profile pic, and she could be falling in love with something that ain't even real, leaves you, discovers she's been had, and then, you know, you lost your wife, and even if you try to take her back, you realize that you were about to lose her anyways. So there's tons of stuff out there. And with dating apps as well, it makes it easier for your wife to cheat on you on the down low. And for men as well. Let's not pretend men are innocent in America. Alright? Especially with how much they thirst for conservative MAGA chicks online. Because a lot of the female MAGA influencers who are Christian, they are thirst trapping extensively. And the men, they're watching them and supporting them. I mean, it is a sad reality that a lot of the women on the right have no brains. They're just nice to look at, and that's why they're famous. And, you know, the male gaze will promote beauty before brains, oftentimes. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. And so, the internet isn't just damaging women, it's damaging men as well, because they see their wife aging. She's got her body wrecked from giving you kids. You can't afford a tummy tuck. You can't afford, to really have her go to spa days and rejuvenate herself. So she starts to fade. Her energy is poured into her kids. And then you see Instagram hoochies who've never had children, and you compare them to your wife, and all of a sudden your eye is on a different apple. So let's not pretend that women are only brainwashed here. Now, let's going further. He says the only God-fearing women you can find today are retired whores LARPing in churches. He misspelled churches. Now, there is a phenomenon where, women, you've made mistakes. Your 20s is a wild time because it's your peak of your beauty. You really think you're not going to age. It's hard to describe to men, but the world is in your hand. If you're attractive, your metabolism is high, no cellulite inside, you just are a blooming orchid, and men are approaching you, and you get haughty, you get arrogant, you don't really look at the clock, you think that you're gonna be the dime forever, and so you have too much sin going on. Hookup culture. America has encouraged hookup culture from when kids now in this generation they have access on their devices to adult content. I mean, even PG-13 movies have references to sexualization. Kids can't avoid it. Girls grow up too fast. And for example, there's not enough religious content that's interesting to combat the degeneracy flow. And so women become those trampy types, and men reward them for it. Andrew Tate, he's not interviewing female scholars or doctors. He's had plenty of interviews with porno chicks. He's giving them attention. He's focusing on them, and he doesn't give two shits about an actually educated woman, right? So he's telling men, hey, don't pay attention to the smart, decent, good girls. Let's just yell at this whore for a second, which provides no value. Because if that chick is making money, she's not going to change unless she has a spiritual awakening. And Andrew Tate told such a woman, Bonnie Blue, not to have a spiritual awakening. He literally told her in the interview, I don't want to hear that you're a born-again Christian. I don't want you to flip on it. So, he's part of the problem, okay? Andrew Tate helped to brainwash women to be less conservative, okay? And he sold courses on how to get girls to do that. Bert Kreischer was talking to, I believe, Tom Segura, and Too Lazy to Try covered this on his YouTube channel, that he wanted to get women to do OF. And he wanted to get a virgin girl to do it so he can make more money. And apparently, I think that he said in the video that's how Kai Cenat got money. So, a lot of famous, influencing Western men encourage women to do OF. Alright? And Turning Point USA gave a former OF girl a huge platform. And she still dresses immodestly, and she did a cake video where she was like sucking on the spoon erotically, and then the Christians shamed people for calling out Nala for that. So again, American Christians are not conservative. Very rarely. You know, if they were actually conservative, they wouldn't fear the hijab. They wouldn't get angry at a woman rejecting the male gaze and being more pious, because their nuns wear that kind of clothing. I think you can tell how conservative a man is by how offended he gets at the bikini versus the hijab. Okay? So now, he's complaining that there's used up goods in the churches. Well, maybe he has to actually move to a place where there's less Western degeneracy. He maybe has to leave America. And you say, oh, small town girls. When small town girls go to the big city, they see the glitz and glamour and can often become corrupted. Just like when men bring their immigrant wives over here, they start to change as well, because they assimilate into the degeneracy. Men have to stop the degeneracy if they want to have decent women, right? Because the men lead the women, and the women will change depending on what the men want. They will shift how they need to be in order to get picked. And if men give more attention to the lewd women, as they have since the 60s, well, then you're going to keep having that. Look at Rollo Tomasi's, the Las Vegas show he does. I forget what it's called. But in the thumbnail, it's chicks with fake boobs, lots of makeup, lots of Botox, BBLs, and they're ranting about this. Attention is not given to actual, modest, classy, decent women. It's given to the whores of Babylon. That's just the way it is. And if you want to change that, you have to start with the men and what menu items they want. Then he says, only 1 out of 100 women are actually good girls. You never know if you will find one of those. You don't know if you can find one of them, but you gotta be a man worthy of them. I'm raising daughters, alhamdulillah, and I got a boy now. And it's a scary thought of how I'm gonna find them mates. Especially for my son, that's so far away, but it's now a very scary thought. You know, like, how do you... Oh my gosh, subhanAllah, like, what if I really do have to move to a Muslim country and get a hijabi for him, because I don't want him to... I don't get to choose who he marries, right? But as a mom, you're scared, like, I don't want some skank coming home who I can see through and she's brainwashed my son with her body. You know, that's pretty scary. And I don't want some Andrew Tate clone to be around my daughters, or I'm gonna catch a case and go to prison. You know, that would be horrible. So it's really scary when you think about, can you afford to move? But even if you move, those type of cockroaches will pop up in anywhere in the world. So it is like a scavenger hunt in a way. So I do understand his point right there. And then he says further here, the said good girl could be lying about her past. Yeah. I literally saw, like, I don't know if this is true, but it did sound weird. Someone said that in Islam, you're a virgin if you're not married. And I was like, what? That's not the definition of the word in English. A virgin is someone who's never had intercourse. Okay, if you've had intercourse, logically, you're not a virgin anymore. And he's like, no. You could, and I said, wait a minute. And they said in the comments, it was on a Simela King post. So if you have 50 men that you've slept with, suddenly you can call yourself a virgin online in your dating profile because you're not married? No, that's not how that word works. In English, he said, oh, Islam doesn't have a concept of virginity. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, again, you gotta be super careful because there are women who will lie. And there's a surgery or something I've heard of, I haven't verified this, that you can make yourself bleed. But also, not all women bleed when they have their first time. And the hymen, one chick said in the comments of that post that you can break your hymen through sneezing. And it's like, are you joking me right now? What kind of sneezes are you having? Are you just sniffing black pepper all day? You know, are you walking through like the most dustiest part of like an ancient bookshop or something? What are you talking about? These violent sneezing? I mean, I've heard some old grandpas sneeze like, achoo! But I mean, come on. What are you doing? So, you know, with the digital footprint, you'll be able to see a woman's history more. But you can spot good girls that are born that way by their haya, by their shyness. And I've been able to perceive this more as I get older. The fast girls, they're fast. You can tell. Okay, you're wearing tiny shorts, your cleavage is out, your eyebrows are pencil eyebrows, you got spider eyelashes. You're not, the way you're conducting yourself isn't of a bashful, shy girl. It's more ghetto and trashy. It's just, you can see it. You can see on their face and how they behave, how they walk, how they talk, what kind of music they listen to. Hopefully they listen to no music, but if they're listening to some Sexy Red, then you know, nah, this isn't a good girl. And you just have to use your brain, alright? But some women are really good at spinning lies. So they can look like a good girl, but they're not. And you have to be worthy of those girls who are shy and not abuse them, because a lot of parents out there are raising good girls, but they're not going to let you within 10 feet of those girls because they're not out there hanging out with boys. They're protected at home. Alright? So, that's another thing. They're not at sleepovers. And they're not going to prom. They're, like, protected. A lot of conservative Christians, they just, here's some birth control. Go have fun. Sayonara. They don't hover and protect. They say that's, most of them are saying that's helicopter parenting and shame people for it. But that's how you keep the foxes out the hen house, as they say. He also mentioned, I don't agree with what he says here, that if you marry a girl who isn't a virgin, that you're a cuck. That's pretty extreme. That's impractical. You know, that right there, as a mom, he would be discounted from even approaching my daughter, because that's some extremeness right there. It just, that is such a negative way that he's gonna talk to, I don't know. See, there's an extremism. Only virgins have value, but if you had 2 kids and you're a widow, you some have no value. See, there's a balance there, and you have to think about the mental health of your daughter when you go to get her married to somebody, and what kind of father this guy's gonna be to little girls, to your grandchildren, essentially. Again, and also with these types of comments, these people oftentimes have a very degenerate search history. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there. They'll watch women who are skanky and give them attention and whatnot, but then they wouldn't marry someone who's not a virgin. And they think that they're worthy of a virgin. That's a prize. Like, those women, especially in 2025, those are a prize. And you have to be able to be a good quality husband to deserve that. Alright? Now, there are men who are cucky, like Kanye West. Definitely, Kanye West is definitely the definition of that. Because he parades his woman around, and the Islamic definition of dayuth is also very accurate. He mentions here further, not to mention a good girl can still take you to the cleaners in divorce court the moment she wants to. Now, divorce court issues are pretty intense, but I think there's a darker side to this that a lot of men don't recognize. As a woman, you sacrifice your body, and once you get kids, you have more baggage, and it's very difficult for a woman who's a good mom to find a stepfather who she can trust to be around her children. So, if she didn't go to college, and she doesn't have money saved, and you start to change and she wants to leave you, and she doesn't have a family, because there's so many broken families, she's got to have some financial security, and the court system kind of provides that. Now, in Islam, from my understanding, you're not supposed to use secular courts. You're supposed to have a Sharia court to handle your divorce stuff. But I do know that some women who are Muslim go about using secular divorce courts. You'd have to go to someone with a good understanding in fiqh and marriage fiqh and all that to handle such a huge topic. But you can do a prenup, and if a woman doesn't want to marry you with a prenup, well, then obviously you don't have to marry her. See, you can vet, you can set up prenuptial agreements, you can work hard on your marriage to make sure that you don't lose her, but also, if you do get divorced, it's not the end of the world. There's also ways you can protect your assets, right? Putting things in your mom's name, having things in other countries, you gotta do justice by the woman who gave you children, because she couldn't never look at her body the same. And if she took the time to raise your children well, and then you become terrible and an asshole and arrogant, and she decides she's had enough for her mental health, you gotta think, she's never gonna have what she had before she had children. And men can be 50 and get a 20-year-old. She can't be 50 and get a 20-year-old. Very few women can do that. Jennifer Lopez has had so much plastic surgery, she's half Barbie. So the average woman sees like, hey man, it's a pretty intense exchange. And the pain of contractions, and for women who have to have C-sections, or women who had miscarriages, there's so much suffering that comes with pregnancy, labor, delivery, and postpartum, and the first 2 years. That's a big exchange to risk for a guy who can suddenly switch up on you, and you're like, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. So I understand why that was invented, but it is abuse, so it's a whole huge conversation, right? But then I would also tell women, try to pick better, but you don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to grant you. Noah didn't have a wife that was... No, was it Noah? Sorry, Prophet Lot. Prophet Luth, alayhi salam. His wife was one who died with the disbelievers. And you have to think about, a prophet can have... No, but Noah has son, if I recall. he also perished. I feel like it was Noah and Lot who had wives who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed. So if a prophet can have a bad wife, we as regular common people have to understand that your spouse isn't going to be perfect. But subhanAllah, men get the Huriyalain in paradise. And I saw a Sayyid came to a post that says unmarried women will have a spouse assigned to them in paradise. So you're going to be fine. Paradise is the real abode, so don't worry. Alright? But if she divorces, she leaves. But if you got money and a good personality, and you're not a psychopath, it's not too hard for men to get remarried again. It really isn't. It's much harder for women, I'd argue. But I know someone will beg to differ. And then he says here, she can change her mind any time in the 50 plus years you have to spend together for the marriage to succeed. I also saw some stats on how many men leave their wives if they get cancer, if they get an illness. You know, think about how scary that is for a woman as well. I feel for both people. The man and the woman both have a lot to lose. And they have to work so hard at keeping their relationship together. You know. He further says, now let's say somehow you manage to find such a good girl and also manage to keep the relationship together till you die. It's still problematic. Raising kids in this economy and socioeconomic environment is just not feasible. It is, though. Look, you know how when it comes to the food, I've been watching a lot of travel vlogs because, you know, in the middle of the night I have to nurse my baby, and, you know, it's almost like traveling without traveling. And I'll probably never be able to afford to travel, so I might as well watch someone else have some fun. And you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, India, Vietnam, and I just sit back and I'm like, if they can do it, we can do it. And you look at Bedouins, and then I thought about people in Antarctica, people in some snowy tundras. They're still surviving. And further, look at the people in sub-Saharan Africa. They are free. They may have less, and they may get some diseases or whatever. If they had better clean water, I think it'd be awesome. But they're surviving. And that's the thing about humans, man, is they are having kids and surviving. And no matter how bad these Western nations go to Africa, they go to India, and they're like, here's birth control, stop breeding, we want depopulation. See, that's the thing. They want depopulation of other countries and then population of other countries. There's a lot of eugenic programs going on, anti-natalist propaganda. But it is feasible. You know what's holding a lot of people back? They feel like losers in the culture if they don't spend like 100K on college, if they don't have the nicest Apple Watch, if they don't got an Apple phone. There's trinkets. It's materialism. And I've awoken to this over time because there's a hierarchy also amongst whites. Are you a white trash white? Are you middle class white? Or are you a bougie white? And the bougie whites look down on everyone else, but the middle class whites really don't like the trailer trash whites. Well, you know, because a lot of them are on meth, or they have time, but they don't educate their grammar. They don't reform themselves. They're dirty, and they don't know how to save. They don't know how to cook. They consume too much reality TV. They don't really perfect themselves or contribute much. Some do, but on average, they have a very negative stereotype for a reason. And they're living out in the boonies. And my cousin, she lived in a trailer park. And it was a very sad situation. A lot of doctors going on over there. And even though they have time to learn, they won't. Getting them to read a book is like trying to put a dress on a crocodile. It's just not going to happen, you know. Whereas wealthy parents, they often focus on education, whereas poor ones, they kind of don't. You know, it's really quite sad. But the fact of the matter is, it is possible to raise kids. You just have to fortify yourself not to be vapid, not to be materialistic. You got to be able to take the resentful glares. See, one thing I notice is women will do this with each other. Like, look at, okay, I have a very simple folk purse. It's handmade, it's Peruvian, made from llama wool, and it was like $25, right? To me, it's cool because it's handmade and it's Peruvian. One of my kids' old teachers gave me a purse from like Macy's, but it's like that fake rubber, which actually, in my opinion, looks more trashy than my cool handmade one. But she perceived my kind of folk purse as more trashy, and her style of the square black purse as sophisticated and better, and was trying to give me fashion advice by giving it to me. It was like a subliminal message, like, oh, here, I got this for you. Basically trying to, I didn't ask for it, but she's basically telling me, what you're wearing isn't good enough, and then here's this gift. You know, whereas me, it's like, no. I like that kind of folksy stuff. I like it when people wear traditional clothing and, you know, ponchos. I love ponchos. I like that. I don't want a fancy Macy's or Bloomingdale's jacket. I went through that style, and no, I'm not paying that price for those clothes. No, I don't think so. I like to sponsor people directly as much as possible. And I have to, you know, I didn't feel anything when she did that. That's actually my toddler Tiger Paws play purse now. But I'm too strong to be affected by that type of fashion thing. Right? But there are women who are controlled by fashion. They are contributors to the pollution of fast fashion. Fast fashion, Victoria's Secret, you got the whole pink yoga pants era where it said pink on the back, the Forever 21, H&M, these corporations get in different towns, and then everyone's wearing the same clothes and they're afraid to be different, and they're trying to follow the trends on Instagram. They're going into credit card debt for clothes, trying to look rich when they're not. Some people are just really addicted to appearing like they're wealthy when they're not. And I woke up to this when I converted to Islam and started to study more hadith. It is possible, my point is, to raise children in this economy. You just have to trim the fat, as they say. You gotta recognize there might be times where your socks have holes, where your pants have holes, where your shoes ain't the best brand, and you go to the grocery store and there's going to be someone standing next to you who has an overpriced watch, overpriced shoes, a fancy cologne, and you may feel weird, but look about what actually matters. Okay, you're going to take your deeds with you. I have mad respect for monks and nuns and sheikhs, everyone who breaks free from the fashion dilemma. Because when you have true fashion and you're really comfortable with self-expression, you don't need to buy these name brands. That you being a walking billboard, like when I see a Louis Vuitton, most of the time it's fake. But that person was so enslaved, they felt that they had to buy a fake Louis Vuitton to make it look like they had cash. To me, you're signaling, rob me, rob me. That's all that is. You got people risking their lives. For example, if you look in California, gangs do raids on Nordstrom and different shopping places. They risk going to jail to raid a store for clothes so that they can flip it on eBay or flip it on the black market. Because they know that they can get it for free and get capital by reselling it to people. How utterly pathetic and stupid. You want to risk sitting in a jail cell because you were flipping jackets from Nordstrom, you can see that the brainwashing of the consumeristic mindset has made people think this is what shows status. This is what is important. And ironically, a lot of women will sell access to their bodies for a Birkin bag. I just can't believe that women will let strange men mount them and risk getting an STD, okay? Increase their body count, increase mental trauma, so for a bag, for shoes, and that you have gold diggers encouraging that behavior. I mean, it's wild to me. So you can raise kids to be strong and content. I look at these kids, man. I was watching a vlog of them going to Yemen. They gave these little boys soccer balls, and these kids were so happy. And I started to think about how so many of those people, they lack so much, but they got family, and they're content with little. Whereas, look at Dudley and Harry Potter. Funny example, I know. Typical millennial mentioning Harry Potter. I know the stereotype. But Dudley was not happy with the presents he got. He needed more, right? Greed. Hoarding. In Islam, we are encouraged not to hoard wealth. Okay? Americans have this problem of hoarding. There's even shows about it. Hoard this. Because from the Great Depression, people realized you gotta plan for the future and have a stockpile. Americans have this, like, oh, we need a stockpile. We need a pantry, which is survivalist mindset, true. But it gets hijacked by commercialization. And people think you gotta have a way to flex status. And they do this by buying too many sweaters, buying too many shoes. I just remember my dad had this woman who is the mom of my siblings. And her closet, it's just too many damn shoes. It's like, what are you doing? What is this? But again, some people, they gotta see all this junk around them, and they start drowning in junk. I made a video where I asked the people, are you drowning in junk? Because so many people think they can't have kids just because they can't have all this junk around them. And no one wants to take hand-me-downs. One lady gave us a present for my second child of this vintage pajama dress thing, and it was so cute. I mean, it was of the classical style of the 80s, maybe 70s. I don't know how it survived this long, but it was super cute and well made. And I loved it because it was so different. And it's obviously used. But some people might be like, oh, how dare you give me something used? It must be brand new. And it's like, no. Sometimes you can get something vintage and it's like, wow, get over yourself. Again, do what you gotta do to survive in a halal way. Alright? But again, also learning to cook can help you recognize that you can make all kinds of food. That's why I've been going to the library getting free cookbooks. I already have a lot of cookbooks that I've bought, but I wanted to try new recipes. And subhanAllah, it's amazing how you learn different flavor combinations, different flavor profiles, and how you can stretch your dollars. And your palate is going to change over time. You can make elegant quality food at home way better than a restaurant. I'm getting to the level now where I feel I cook better than most restaurants. Not to be arrogant, but I think to myself, why am I going to pay like $25 for an Eggs Benedict when I can make it better at home and where the cook isn't itching his balls and then touching my food? I've worked in the restaurant industry for, like, when I came in 2007 to California. I've been a stay-at-home mom for about 4 years now. So, a long time I was in the restaurant industry. I've seen how gross it is. I've seen how they lie about the quality of their ingredients. and how there's no law against them lying really about that. If they say, and you say, is the chicken organic? It's all natural. Okay, that doesn't answer the question. Obviously, it's not an alien chicken. Alright? Is it organic? And they avoid the question. We're trained to lie to customers. And there were also some places where on the menu it would say it was organic, and then you go in the back and you see it's not. And you're like, what the hell? Who do you call to report a business for that? You know, the point is, a lot of people, they think that they're losers if they're not eating out all the time. It's a shame. It's a shame. And when you're a homemaker, you need to make your home. You need to put effort. You can do it. And you just have to feel like you're valued in your family. Will your husband validate you and be like, hey, you're doing great, I appreciate you. Women will give you her heart, man, if she just feels like you appreciate her, right? Now, he goes further and says, you will be spending lots of money to send them to a school that teaches them woke garbage. This is why I have conversations with my kid when she comes home, with my eldest. I will tell her, like, what'd you learn today? I'll ask her, and we'll have conversations, and I'm like, hey, whatever stuff you learn, run it by me, and we can talk about it. And then you dissect it, you analyze it, you show evidence. You'll be surprised how your kid can turn on their teachers. And when my kid was in the 5th grade, was it? No, or was it 4th grade? They read her a book, Jazz Jennings, about a trans. And my kid came home and told me, a boy can become a girl. And I was like, no, they can't. No, they can't. And then we had a whole conversation about it and told her what eunuchs are. You explain how they have to dilate their wound, their rot pocket. It's not the same. And then you describe femininity, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us. And then you have a serious conversation, and she cried because she was mad that her teacher lied to her. And then, we had this whole conversation further that your teachers are not infallible. They're not all smart. They're there to collect a paycheck. And not everything you learn in school is true. And you should be very skeptical. And that school is almost like a giant daycare that you're forced to go to. And they are forced. From 5 days a week, the government takes away your child and has them there from 8:30 to 3:30. I think that's way too long, man. But some moms, they don't want to be with their kids, and they also got to be at work because the economy is in a way where they don't want you to be with your kids. They want you to contribute to the GDP so they can continue to wage war. There's a whole conversation around that. But if you don't want your kids to learn woke garbage, you have to have conversations. But you also got to understand they're going to form their own opinions. You know. And not every kid takes school so seriously, so don't be nihilistic. There's plenty of students who are just like, whatever. I mean, I've had teachers who I saw were woke when I was at community college, and I knew, okay, I could refute this person, but I'm probably going to get an F on my paper. Alright, I can just parrot back her bullshit ideas. That sounds bad, but okay, I know what she wants to hear. Alright, I can pass her little quiz. You gotta read the room, and that's unfortunate, but liberals do run the education system, and I was in several classes where I said my honest opinion, and the teacher just really treated me different after that, and then you're like, okay, this person's gonna fail me on purpose, even though I have some points. The teacher's not open to hearing other ideas, so I'm just gonna make sure I don't screw up my GDP, and let's just pair it back with this moron wants to hear. That's survival instinct, right? So, you can have conversations with your kids, is my point. And then he says here, homeschool, bro. How many people actually pull that off? What about the social development of the kid? Social development, I mean, the only social development I learned in all my schooling was fighting and the skanky sexual dynamics. When I went to school in Utah, most of the girls were all trying to be popular by who has the biggest boobs and who's let's not be vulgar, but I mean, American schools are not a place where you learn being social. There's a lot of degenerate behavior. And I've taught my child, my eldest, these people are your acquaintances. They don't matter in the giant scheme of things. You go to school, you're in, you're out. Okay? That's what it is. It's not a place where you're going to meet your soulmate, where you're going to make friends for life. These people will grow up, they'll move away, they won't think about you, you won't think about them, but you want to maintain your good reputation. And don't trust them at all. And don't gossip, don't get in people's drama. Just go to school, do your work, turn it in, come home. That's all it is. Alright? And some people, they raise their kids to be the opposite. To be someone who seeks popularity and validation from others. Whereas a lot more people would be happy if they just realized you don't have to force yourself in certain situations to be liked by everyone. So, social development is a continual process until the day you die. Because there's people who are too friendly and don't know when to shut up. And then there's people who don't know when to speak up. You know, you learn. You learn. Say goodbye to your me time if you do that. That is true. I don't know how some of these women homeschool. I mean, it seems really hard. If you have a ranch, like if I had a ranch and a farm, where I could get space for my kids, I'd be like, okay. But if you're in a tiny apartment and you're just with your kids all night, all day, and then you're talking to them, when are you really going to get time to yourself? And your husband needs to take you out sometimes or something. I don't know. I've never homeschooled, never been homeschooled. I don't have any friends who have homeschooled, but at that, you being in charge of your kids' academic future is a lot of pressure. Whereas I feel like I would add to the public school stuff. You know what I mean? And I would have a hard time balancing. How do I do chores and get what I need to get done? It would be very difficult. Now, if I become a grandma and then I can help out my daughters and my son with their children by adding into the education, like on Saturday and Sunday, I do like a little homeschool thingy. Maybe that could work because help. But moms who don't have help, I think that's quite difficult. How are you supposed to work out, do chores, and then educate your kids and all that? That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. But I know some women do it, and I'm proud of them. But I think that homeschool kids have better manners than the public school kids. Because the public school kids, a lot of them are very into the trends. My kid will say things like "skibbity toilet," and I'm like, "What is this?" We don't say that at home, and the kids at school say it, so they often copy what they hear, even though they're not around those kids outside of school. But they get different vernacular at school. The homeschool kids have great manners and better social development and less skanky, you know? Your daughters don't need to imitate the cheerleader who's been passed around, you know? That's just not a thing. And for boys, yeah, in sports, they learn the pecking order. They get to become more masculine, some of them. But I've seen some terrible examples of some boys, skinny boys, who have great brains, but they don't have no bronze, and they're getting bullied, man, by the low IQ, tough guy. And it's really sad. And sometimes I want to stick up for those nerdy boys, because I can see it when I'm waiting for my daughter when she gets outside of school. But I think these teenage boys, they might attack me, you know. There's not too much respect for elders or women in general among some of these rambunctious, fatherless teens. And so I'm not trying to stick my neck out. And that young man is going to have to learn on his own. But subhanallah, it's rough out there. I didn't get any benefit from public school socially at all. I didn't like it. If I would have had a private tutor, I think that would have been much better for me. And my mom and grandma didn't have jobs, so they could have done it if they wanted to, but they're too lazy. So if they were in charge of my homeschooling, I would have been a damn retard, you know? So there's that. And he says here, and your wife might not agree to it, yeah, it's a lot of pressure to put on a woman. Here, this is you're in charge of your kid's future. But if you look at it also, your kid will learn a lot of home skills, life skills. School doesn't teach you a lot of life skills. At home, you're going to see like how the real world works, and you'll get that benefit. So there's pros and cons to both. He says further here, your kid might turn out to be an absolute loser raised by TikTok degens. You can only parent them so hard. That's true. I haven't even talked about other common issues like loss of interest, weight gain due to complacency in both spouses, fights, and petty arguments. Yeah, but you're gonna get in petty arguments at your job with someone who's like got road rage. Fights can happen literally anywhere now. Some, tweaker can be like, and you're like, I don't know what you're saying, and then they just like hit your car. I mean, there's so many junkies now. You don't even have to do anything to have an argument, so. And weight gain, that's common in relationships when you get too comfortable. But give her time to work out and be able to tell her she needs to work out in a way where she doesn't resent you. And give her time after the children. It's a lot of work. And cake's delicious, When men gain weight, that's really sad because they didn't have children. They're not recovering from something. They just need to stop putting food in their mouth. But their wife has to also let them work out. He has to be able to work out. She has to be able to work out. And they need to kind of motivate each other to keep going and to eat healthy and to make better lifestyle choices. He goes further, pretty long post, but let's be real. In today's feminist society where a woman is bombarded with endless simping and dating apps where she can F-chat on demand, why would any woman do all that for me? Low self-esteem. Low self-esteem. 2 red flags in this post. The one who he calls anyone who doesn't marry a virgin a cuck. And now he says, why would any woman do that for me? Okay. You don't value yourself. And a woman can just smell that. And you should have more respect for yourself. And you should be working towards that. A woman will do a lot for you if you're a good man. I know it sounds a little bit like Romeo and Juliet. But come on. There's literal men who are criminals with tattoos on their face. And you got ladies begging to be with them. Okay? Sometimes it really is about aura and how you carry yourself. And if you come across as a whiny little gamma male, then subhanallah, why would a woman feel safe giving you offspring? But that's of a more primal nature. Now, endless simping, that is true. A lot of women, they get a huge inflated ego. And that's just par for the course. Men also, they'll get, when they have money, they get lots of chicken heads, lots of groupies. Groupies are female simps. Okay? Oh, you're so great, I love it. And they get like, oh, I'm so special, My wife is not like this, and so I can replace her with a newer model. And men are on dating apps as well. You got that problem for both. Men have groupies, women have simps, but very few women marry their simps. And if you don't want men to be simps, then you gotta start promoting women based on their brains, not their beauty. You gotta teach men how to rear it in. That's why Islam, when it tells men to lower their gaze and allows men to have 4 wives, that's so hard to make a man a simp. If a man controls his gaze, does fasting to prevent his libido from going insane, right? And he can have 4 wives. Come on. He's got a buffet. But if he's not able to get a wife and he hasn't worked on his body, and he hasn't worked on his personality, and he doesn't know how to not be cringe and awkward, and he's arrogant and rude, it might be a lot harder, right? So there's a huge topic we could get into, and if you want to leave something down below, let us all know, because this is a pretty intense post. And I saw the Radfems making fun of this post. That's how I discovered it, right? And then he says, where she can F Chad on demand, why would any woman do all that for me? Okay, so the Chad is like the hot, low IQ Tarzan, right? Or he's what they would call a high value man. There's a lot of, it's a slang term for an attractive male. Now, the flip side is, why, or we could tell a woman, why would you sacrifice your body for a guy who can go hook up with an escort so fast? Right? That's a scary thing. Why would you risk getting pregnant and carrying a baby for 9 months for a guy who can go behind a McDonald's and pump up a chick for, he gives her a bag of cocaine or a blunt and she'll do it? Think about it. Think about it. Men are fear getting cucked, and women fear getting replaced and booted out while pregnant. It's a very primal fear that, when you're pregnant, you are very weak. For women who want to keep their baby, who want to have a safe, happy pregnancy journey, there's a lot of anxiety. And dating apps present a huge problem. Huge problem. Because so many men, they don't have the discipline and patience to not watch adult content, to not cheat while their woman is pregnant and recovering and trying to get her body back in those 2 years. Again, this works both ways. He says here, marriage has been reduced to a mating strategy for beta buckers who cannot F women without commitment. It's a retirement strategy for girls past their peak attractiveness. Sorry, I will pass on marriage in big 2025. Now, notice here, he thinks marriage is just for women who are past their peak. But yet he said he would only marry... okay, he can't expect for parents to approve of a marriage if he talks this way. Imagine if the guy's like, I want your virgin daughter, but he says that marriage is a retirement strategy for girls past their peak attractiveness. You'd be like, no, your entire mindset doesn't deserve, you're not worthy of a virgin. Okay? You don't get that. You can go and be with your OF chick in hell. Alright? You cannot demand the cream of the crop when you think marriage is a mating strategy for subpar people. No. Good, conservative, good girls are raised with hold it till marriage. Hold it till marriage. And men who are quality don't demand intimacy on the first day. Okay? This is why it makes so much sense that Islam is get married and then have relations. No zina, no illicit sexual intercourse, no sexual corruption. Get married, then enjoy each other. Alright? That's the way it's supposed to be. It makes way more sense for a woman to demand commitment first, because you got these ladies out here who are giving it away for 5 years and their man never proposes. And then they get that pain inside like, damn, this guy won't marry me. And that's a sad thing. There are men who will drag women along for years and never put a ring on it. But then suddenly they come across a woman who demands a ring and they're like, yeah, I'll wait. And then they marry her because she's got some standards about her. She just doesn't give it away so easily. See, America's got it all confused. We have it so confused in America. We're told to give it away, like that movie with Julia Roberts. It's called Pretty Woman. And that was a woman who was a prostitute, and then she ends up getting, picked up by a rich guy because of her beauty. She was able to leverage her sexuality. And a lot of women are taught that. They're taught, no, 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 lose it by 16, get experience, and then when you get your dream guy, give it to him so good that he has to put a ring on it. This is what a lot of women are taught. And that doesn't seem to be how male psychology works. They use the loose women for recreation, and then they demand virgins. This is very confusing. And then when you see these men who have high body counts, like John Zerka, Andrew Tate, Myron Gaines, when you're an actual conservative parent, you're like, hell no, I don't want that as a son-in-law. Like, that's not safe. He might give a disease to my daughter. Like, he's gonna use her and throw her away. Look, he can't commit to anything. He's disgusting. Ew, that viper is not coming into our tribe. You know, no way. But if you see a guy who's like stoic, reserved, good manners, comes from a good family, has a little bit of charm about him, he's got taqwa, and he manages his demeanor quite well, and he doesn't have a reputation for sleeping with skanks and hoes and then bragging about it online, right? You're like, that's a good brother. See, we're so corrupted in American society now, where the pimp slimeball Andrew Tate, the porno dude, is placed up as a role model for some men. And then we see women saying, okay, well, this is how you get the man with money, and money equals goodness, money equals approval of in society. And women think, I have to get the money so no one looks down on me. So if the men with money want a woman who behaves in this way, well, then I have to be that way. And then women also see the hypocrisy of, look, he's got his woman at home, who's the housewife, and he's out here cheating on her with the women he claims to hate. So there's so many avenues for deep introspection. And so this post could be called an incel post. All right, and we have a rising a group of men who have decided to check out, or others who become passport bros. So many phenomenons now. But I think this highlights how when people say assimilate into Western culture, look how Western men talk about Western women. Notice this. This is a rising concern, right? So when people like Valentina Gomez and others say, well, oh, these Muslims aren't assimilating, why would someone who comes from a conservative country, their daughters are good, decent, then turn around and say, well, now you gotta dress like a skank and slang it until you land a rich dude, maybe? What? No. So if someone could do an accurate survey of the average age and body count of women and men, it would probably be very eye-revealing, but we can't do that kind of research technically in Islam, because then we would be exposing people's sins technically, I think. But the movies and the music encourage women to be promiscuous and lewd, and for men to be piggish. Both the men and women are equally to blame in this circumstance. Men lead women. And if men are giving attention to skanky, lewd chicks and encouraging abortion, look at that guy Walter from Fashion Fit. He was dating that Chinese beauty pageant lady. She got pregnant by him, and then he automatically said abort. He did not man up and raise that kid. He knew by finishing inside of a woman that the risk was pregnancy. He deleted his own offspring. He wanted to delete his own offspring. And he wears a cross around his neck and calls himself Christian. Ridiculous. So he ain't conservative, and he wears a cross. What are women to do with a situation like that? She had beauty. You know, it wasn't enough for him to say, let's try to make it work. Nope. He just said, deletus the fetus. Pretty dark. And now that woman, I mean, is very damaged mentally. And Myron's fans hacked her, harassed her, called her names in a chat. You know, it's really quite sad. She should have made better decisions. And Walter as well. I prayed for that child, you know? It was really quite sad. But again, posts like this, you should think about when someone says they need to assimilate into American culture. Oh, Islam is not compatible with Western values. Islam encourages women to be better. We need a good dissecting of what modern American values are. And then you look at the women, and you look at the men, and you say, is that conducive with biblical morality and with Islamic morality and with 17th century Christian morality or the founding fathers, how their women behaved? Western values in America was women cannot vote. Think about that. How many times they changed what the founding fathers actually wanted? So with democracy, you change the values of the country. And if women say, okay, in 2023, there was over 1 million abortions. That means 1 million women plus they decided this man is not worth reproducing with. He's so low. This country doesn't deserve citizens. And I don't think that motherhood is valuable at this point. So I will delete this child and I will not utilize my fertility. Think about that. If America was such a great culture, mothers would feel safe to have their babies. And the quality of women would not even think of deleting their babies. And the men as well would not want their child to be aborted. And Curb Your Enthusiasm, there was an episode where Larry's fat friend, the Jay who has that really vulgar wife, he cheats on his wife with a dental hygienist. I think she was wearing scrubs. I think she was a dental hygienist. And he pays for her to get an abortion like it's nothing. That's like taking out the trash. And you're like, he's cheating on his wife. He gets the mistress pregnant and then deletes his own offspring. That is American culture. And a nation built on the bones of the sacrificed babes cannot have blossoming good trees from such blood-drenched soil. And it's interesting how when I was growing up in Utah, one of my schools had the logo of the bald eagle, which is very symbolic for America. And you're raised with a lot of patriotic pride, especially on 4th of July. You know, you have fun and paint your face blue and white. As I've aged, I've begun to see my culture led me astray. And Islam set me aright. And people who don't want America to become Islamic are often preserving degeneracy. And when they say America is a Christian nation, why aren't they fighting for a Christian theocracy then? Why are they fighting for secularism, which serves the atheist state? And why are women advocating in politics and positions of political power for like Christian values when they themselves are not living those Christian values? It's very strange, isn't it? Let me know what you think. This is a very interesting post, but I'm sure you've come across these types of posts before because they're becoming so common now online. And a lot of platforms censor these types of posts. So I will give credit to the X platform for allowing men to vent in this way, because had he posted this on YouTube, it would have fallen under the category of MGTOW and incel stuff, so they would have deleted it. But I do think for sociology, anthropology majors, they should look at these posts now, because I think in the future they'll wonder, where did things really start to change? And this rhetoric, this outcry from the young men will be examined and analyzed. And it should be analyzed, because these men are going to grow up and be part of the society. right? They're gonna have businesses and be in politics and landlords and stuff like that. And we often look at the feminist side. What are feminists complaining about with men? But what are they complaining about on the male side for the women? And we have to take it serious. And I'm not a dating guru. Dating is haram in Islam. I'm not a marriage expert. I'm just thinking of this in terms of the fruit of American modern culture. Modernity. Not the pie in the sky idealism archetypes, but what is actually happening on the ground. And how, in my opinion, Islam is the vaccine. Islam is the medicine. It is the way in which we can rectify these mistakes. That's my solution, and I'd love to know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, join the blog.